Okay, here's a quick question. Have you ever told your toddler no, and they look right at you and then do the thing anyway? We've all been there, and we all understand that feeling. But what if I told you at that moment, it's not about them being defiant. It's actually part of how their brain is wired to grow and to learn, that God designed us this way.
Hello, and welcome to Talking Toddlers, where I share more than just tips and tricks on how to reduce tantrums or build your toddler's vocabulary. We're going to cover all of that, but here, our goal is to develop clarity, because in this modern world, it's truly overwhelming. This podcast is about empowering moms to know the difference between fact and fiction, to never give up, to tap into everyday activities so your child stays on track. He's not falling behind, he's thriving through your guidance. We know that true learning starts at home, so let's get started.
In today's episode, we're going to unpack what no really means to that child of yours who's under 3 and why they don't respond to it the way that we would like them to or that we really expect. More importantly, I'll walk through how to guide your child with fewer meltdowns, more cooperation, we talked about that in the last episode, and a whole lot more confidence on your part. Because if you're tired of these power struggles, and I'm sure you are, and you just want to know what's developmentally appropriate and how do I know what's actually working and what am I doing wrong in this situation to making it worse, it seems. So what's really going on when they hear no? Let's start with a big fat truth. Toddlers under 3 don't really get what no means. Not in the way that you and I do. Sure, they might recognize your tone or even your facial expression, and they stop, they pause, they even hesitate. They could even look at you like, okay, what does that really mean? You've startled me. You've got my attention. But yet they don't fully comprehend what no means in every different context, that it takes time to learn what you're trying to share with them. And that usually when we say no, it's safety, right? It's protection. It's try to guide their behavior so nothing bad happens, or they make a mess, or they break something. They themselves might not be hurt, but they might hurt an object in your house. But here's the truth. Their brains are on overdrive. When you look at a 1 and a 2 and a 3-year-old, they're soaking up so much all around them every day. At the same time, they're trying to build that autonomy. They're trying to build that independence. They don't have the motor skills. They certainly don't have the cognitive skills. So when we say no, it can feel like you're trying to slam on the brakes to something that's very natural and driving them to explore, driving them to touch stuff and climb on stuff and get involved. That's how they're wired, that they're looking to learn. And so it's really hard for them in a moment to stop, to shift gears, to look at you, to modify their behavior in real time, because they don't have that cognitive fluidity, right? And they certainly don't have the motor coordination. Not because they're being naughty. It's because they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Explore, touch, feel, taste, get involved. So think of it as you're not failing them. You're trying desperately to teach them the boundaries, to teach them appropriate guidelines. They're not failing. They're doing exactly what they are wired to do, to explore, to learn, to create, to get involved, like I said. And all of this is just a process. And so when you're looking at a 12-month-old, 18, 24 months, 36 months, that's not a lot of time to put all of this together. So as they're trying to build and assert their independence, at the same time to experience life, and a lot of this stuff they do with this fearless intent. And you're like, Are you crazy? Why would you touch that? Are you crazy? Why would you climb on that? Are you crazy? Why would you stick that thing in that hole? Or I saw a little girl the other day. She was really, really interested. Like, can my head fit between these two bars on this handrail? And I'm like, don't go there. You will get stuck. It will hurt. And I had a moment of, oh my gosh, we're going to have to call the fire department to come in and saw those things off. Fortunately, we were able to stop her before it got too far. But they're fearless, right? And they're driven to explore, driven to try things. So when we say no or stop, that truly contradicts their natural native state. And so I want you to think of this as biology, not bad behavior. And sometimes when we think about what is developmentally appropriate, what is really their neurological system wiring at that moment. So it's not by choice. It's not being naughty or deviant or bad. They're just testing. And they have no idea of what danger or any of that is. So let's take a brief look at what these stages are that really shape their independence, because that's what we want them to do. We want them to be independent. We want them to be curious and to explore, but we also want them to respect our boundaries and to listen to us with our directions, our limitations, and especially when we say no, we want them to stop immediately. So somewhere around that first birthday, give or take, closer, like I'd say 14, 16 months, when they have a little bit more body control, they're really in that stage of me do it, me do it. And they're pushing you back because that's how they're wired to build that independence. They have a little bit more gross and fine motor skills, and they insist on climbing into the car seat or their high chair all by themselves, even though you and I are holding our breath, right? They want to do it themselves. They insist on pouring the water themselves, even though 80% of it ends up on the floor, right? You've been there. But that's autonomy. That's where they're trying to match up their curiosity and interest in this world with their physical immaturity, right? That's all just beginning to come online. And their curiosity. How does this work? What does this feel like? Does this taste good? All of these. Well, is this important? Like, could it be important to me? Is it just important to them? What is important? I don't even know what that word is, right? But it's pretty striking when just about that 18-month-old to that 36-month-old, those months, and most of you are in it. You have one or more, and that you and I know, we know how clumsy they are, that they don't really have good fine motor skills. They don't have the physical strength to really climb up that or the balance skills yet. Right? It's coming online. It's getting better every week. And we know it's going to take a lot for them to figure this out. But even as their fine and gross motor skills are developing and emerging, they still want to try it, right? They still want to do it. And that's where that fine line is, where you and I have to think, okay, how do we give that room to grow and stretch and try, and yet not scare us to death, not break stuff, not get hurt, all of these kinds of things. So think of the activities that you're facing today, the daily ADLs, right? Activities of daily living, that getting dressed, trying to put on your pants and not falling over, or the shirt inside out, backwards, whatever, brushing their teeth, brushing their hair, making choices. All of that takes time and effort. And if they're going to be permitted to do that, which this is what I'm encouraging you to do, then you need to always be writing in an extra 5 minutes here, an extra 10 minutes here. But in the middle of all of this, 18 to 36 months, is a really big milestone of toilet training. And that takes up a lot of mental, emotional, and sensory bandwidth that they need. This time period, you and I, those that are really supporting them, have to be patient and understanding and realistic. because we want them to continually grow and learn and enhance these skills, but also listen to us and let us help them when help is really needed and give them space. The contrast to this autonomy and building their independence and building their initiative even is really doubt, uncertainty, and even shame, right? And you might be wondering like, well, I'm just trying to protect them. I'm just trying to keep them safe. I'm just trying to get flow to my day and not craziness. Because this is where I think it really gets tricky for us as the grownups and the parents. Letting them try also means that we have to let them struggle. And that's tricky. We also have to let them get messy and make mistakes. It also means letting them not get it on the first try and that we have to be patient, or the 20th try. And all of that can be hard. Struggle, messiness, and patience, right? Especially in this modern 2025 lifestyle that we're trying to navigate. We're bombarded with messages about safety first, right? And I'm always about safety first, but at the same time, you have to give them that room to explore and build and hone those skills. We're also bombarded by productivity and getting your kid to be bigger and better and all of that. But then we have these unrealistic images, perfection on Instagram and TikTok, and none of that's real. You and I know that there are filters and editing and clips. You know, when you take a 10-second clip out of something that's taken you 3 hours to record, I'm amazed. Right? That's not reality. That's not your life, your day-to-day world. And then I think we're also encouraging new moms, new 2025 families to prevent mistakes, right? And to preempt pain and agony and struggle. Struggle is how we learn. And I think this whole channel is about prevention. I want you guys to prevent developmental delays, but that doesn't mean that you do it for them. It means that you're giving them space and time and love and energy to build and hone those skills on their own and to literally wire the brain through their everyday experience. So prevention isn't by doing it for them or making it look good. But I think we accidentally send the message to our little guys like, I don't trust you to figure it out. Or they're trying to say to us, let me try it on my own. I can do this. I've watched you do it 4,500 times. But what we then end up saying to them by mistake is, don't worry, honey, I can do it for you faster or better or more fluently. You need my help. You're too slow. It's not quite right. It's a little messy. All of those nonverbal messages that we're giving them by doing it for them or rushing them through that, that's where shame and doubt begin to creep in our tone, in our body language, in our rushness. And so when your toddler isn't allowed to try or to attempt, even though it's going to be imperfect, then they start to really question their ability. Mommy will do it. And this happens very, very often with kids who are quote unquote late talkers. That typically mom, but even dad and grandma, they'll get used to nonverbal gestures. They'll get used to body language. They'll get used to their routine. And then the child doesn't really have to learn how to talk. I'm loved. I'm protected. I'm well fed. I live in a great nurturing family. All of this is hunky dory. Talking takes too much effort. I can just let mom do it. And none of this is consciously, mind you, on your part or on their part, But over time, it really does chip away at their internal sense of self, their ability to say, I can do this. That struggle isn't a bad thing. And I think it's important that we need to reconnect with the fact that at this stage of growth and development, that 1 and 2 and 3, and even that 4 and 5-year-old, autonomy versus doubt or uncertainty or even shame has really been studied for decades. We know this. We look at Erickson's work in child development and early human growth. We know that if we have environments that are safe and open and opportunities for them to explore on their own, even if it's a little messy, even if it's a little not quite right, that's what builds their confidence and their motivation and their long-term resilience. And they're not then stuck with unrealistic expectation or perfectionism. And so I want us to look at this through practical eyes, that when you're looking at a 12 or an 18, 24, 30 month, they need a lot of opportunity. And so in this, like I've always said here, that we set up the boundaries and then they wiggle between those markets. I do think it's really important that we set the stage that there are some absolutes that they can't kick or bite or throw things in the house. They can't hurt anybody else, but they also can't run out into the streets. In those safety experiences, we have to be really, really firm. If something's dangerous, then that's when we say no. If it's harmful or hurting others, that's when we say no. And that's when we step back and we help them. When I say no, that's a biggie. It's dangerous or harmful. And we save those big, strong no, stop, and that they begin to understand, oh, I better listen on the first time. So when it's other kinds of subtle things, like trying to master these low stairs or trying to put on your shoes even though it's on the wrong foot, or trying to pour the water, like I said, even though most of it ends up on the floor, it's just water. Yes, we have to clean it up. How can I set the stage where maybe it's a little bit smaller of a pour? How can I set the stage where they're a little bit more successful? Those kinds of things, those small learning opportunities that can be a headache from time to time, can be a little messy, like I said, but it still helps them hone their skills, their motor skills, their thinking skills, their organizational skills. And this is where all of that internal wiring is happening through that motor planning and the thinking and the judgment and all of that. And it really is happening in real time. And so when they do hear the big no, then that's for the really big important things. When it really, really matters, danger, right? Seriousness. Because we don't say no to everything. We help shape those other kinds of behaviors and give them an opportunity to try and to get messy and to make mistakes and try again, right? We want toddlers who learn to listen because they feel capable, and not toddlers who obey out of fear or shame when they hear someone yell. And this really starts by letting them do the small stuff, even if it's a little messy or a little slower or takes more time, or you could do it better. You can always go back. When we constantly correct or hover over or stop them in mid event, that shuts down their efforts. And it really does give them a sense, non-verbally, subconsciously, that they're not enough, that it's not worth my effort. And that's where we replace that autonomy and independence with doubt and uncertainty. And I've seen this a number of times, and I just recently saw this a couple of weeks ago. I was at a local playground and meeting some friends, and this happened with a couple of different moms, and I don't even think that they were together, but there was a short 2-foot slide, and they were holding their kids' hands to climb up the slide and slide down the slide. And it wasn't much bigger than they were. And I'm like, they could easily have learned through practice, because they would have done it like 10 times. But what I saw that they did it once or twice with mom hovering, holding the hands. And I'm like, they can't even get their feet underneath themselves because mom's holding their hands. And what do we do with our hands? That's how we balance, right? And so the kids weren't interested. And I thought, well, I know you love her, your child, and you don't want them to fall, but they're only yay big. And if they do fall, they're just going to fall on their bum. It wasn't a big piece of equipment where they would hit their head or any of that. And I thought, oh, we just have to give them room to practice and explore. They didn't get a chance to figure it out on themselves. Mama was too afraid. And without those opportunities to try and to learn, there's no growth. And I keep saying here, it's all interconnected, right? The motor planning, the cognitive thinking, the organization, the language, that let me try and try again. So let me gently challenge a trend that's also going on that we've talked about here before, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon, but this mental attitude that parents say it, and even us adults say it to each other, that you're perfect just the way you are. I love you just the way you are. And when I hear that, I think to myself, yeah, I think every child is special and that they have special gifts that we're trying to shape and blossom. But I also think that it inhibits them to not try difficult things, because development is about becoming, growing into yourself, honing those skills. Growing is about enhancement and stretching yourself. It's not about labeling and keeping you in today's position. When parents say, oh, he's just sensitive, or she is an eager beaver, or that's her ADD, or if we put kids in these boxes and use these labels with very, very young kids, and I even think all the way through high school, I think we've over-analyzed and over-labeled and boxed kids and us grown-ups. And that's a whole nother conversation. But instead, why don't we take a look at them? And this is what I've always said to my daughter, but also to any child I've ever worked with. I love you exactly the way you are today. And I'm really, really excited about who you're becoming. That every day you get a little bit better, a little stronger, and a little more courageous. Because that invites growth without shaming or doubting or minimizing their worthiness. Because I think that that's where confidence builds. Confidence, we don't just arrive and we're born with confidence. We try a lot of things, and through our experience, we build our confidence that I'll figure it out. It might be messy in the beginning, like when you're learning how to cook or when you're learning how to drive a car, right? That's a little messy in the beginning, but we get better with practice. And I have confidence that you're going to become a competent car driver one of these days. So let's take a look at some practical strategies that we can use or keep in our forebrain to help kids, or to help teach what no means. And that's the idea here, is that we're teaching them through everyday experiences to help your little toddler understand what the limits are without yelling, without nagging, or losing confidence in yourself or with them. Always recognize that you're learning on the job too, and that this is new for you, and you're honing your skills just as much as they're honing their skills. So let's run through this list. And again, it's not rocket science. A lot of it isn't quote unquote new or novel. It's things that I have put together that continually has the same threads. For example, the first one is routines. And a couple of weeks ago, I talked all about routines. But here's a list of 10 items that helps them understand what your expectations or boundaries are, and that the word no is really saved for those big, serious things. So routines, that our children thrive knowing what's next. And I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, right? It brings rhythm to your day. We can talk about after snack, we clean up, and then what do we do on Mondays or Thursdays or Saturdays? Keep it simple, but predictable and reinforcing for them. Routines are key. And I've shared this before when parents say to me, okay, what's one thing I can do? Routines. Take a look at that. And that goes for you and me too. What are my daily habits, my daily routines? And that really tells me about how much I get done and how I'm feeling and how I'm sleeping and how I'm relating to other people. Number 2 on this list of teaching your toddler how to understand no and respect the boundaries. The 2 is to check your energy. If you're having to direct them through these new novel experiences, you have to check your tone, your attitude, because if we're always saying no, stop that, turn around, put that down, give me that, go over there, sit down, that's all negative. And that's all they hear. That's all they feel. I'm not good enough. I can't do anything. Oh my gosh. And it's not, again, on a conscious level. This is subconscious for you and for your child. But if we stay calm, if we have faith that they're going to be able to, over time, learn how to get dressed on their own and brush their teeth and make their bed and help with lunch, then we're not frazzled or feeling stressed all the time. And then we can use a calmer voice. If we have built or we're shaping routines into our day, then our energy, our tone of voice, how we meet them and greet them is a lot calmer. And then they're in that calmer state too. They're going to reflect our tone. And that's important. Number 3 is to keep teaching. And I think all parents do this, but I think dads have a little shorter learning curve here, because if they've told them not to do something 3-5 times, they think, he's 24 months old. He's mastered that. I've told you that 6 times today and 6 times yesterday, but they really haven't. So you need to explain things at least 20 times. That's normal. That's typical. And if we do it in a loving, supportive, I've got your back attitude, then they're going to take that in. And kids learn through repetition. They learn through a lot of positive reinforcement. They learn by making some small adjustments, just like when they were learning to crawl and learning to walk and learning to talk and, learning to eat their first foods. All of these are minor adjustments, and then they get the steps going. But we do have to teach them, and we have to be patient. Number 4 would be to offer choices. And I say this a lot, but that really can make or break your everyday routines. That giving choices to your toddler gives them that sense of control. Do you want to wear your red socks or your blue socks? Or better yet, you can wear one of each. Doesn't matter, but you have to put some socks on for these shoes, right? So they have some control or choice making within your boundaries. Number 5, and this is a hard one for a lot of parents, is to ditch the yelling. That never serves anyone. It doesn't serve you or me. And I think I've shared before, I wasn't much of a yeller when my daughter was younger. It was really when she got in the fighting teen years, that became our new style, and that we had to put a big curb on that too. But if we can really reduce that, because yelling overwhelms our nervous system. I never feel good if I yell when I lose it, and it makes their nervous system, that fight or flight, and then it's harder to listen, it's harder to reason, it's harder to learn. Like you're trying to connect the dots. Now, if there's danger, then of course you have to yell from across the room or something. But we're going to keep those to minimum, super dangerous things. But if we want to gain their attention, get down to their level, even whisper. Whispering is always intriguing to kids, and it makes them kind of stop in their whole movement pattern and turn and listen like she's whispering in my ear, right? That's a good way to get their attention. But yelling isn't conducive to anybody at this age. Number 6 would be to help them in that task, help them learn it's scaffolding, which I talked about in a few episodes earlier, that even your little ones, pull them into the task of whatever you're doing and get them to help you, whether it's in the kitchen with stirring or pulling the green beans or throwing the trash away or zipping the zipper on the Ziploc, or pushing down the lid or snapping the lid or opening the refrigerator. All of that. It's good motor planning, good following directions, good steps, right? Put this in the fridge and then put this in the trash. 2-step directions, those kind of things. But it's also helping them to buy in. And I talk a lot about that here. But these are ways to really help reduce, because if we hone their ability to listen, to follow through, to take directives from us, guidance, really, then they're used to that. And so when I say, no, honey, you can't touch that, that's precious or dangerous or fragile, it's not a big deal to them because they're used to getting directions from us and redirections in a soft tone that is positive and reinforcing. Number 7 on this list is to give them time warnings. And again, this isn't rocket science. Everybody knows this cognitively. You see it in, preschool settings and church school settings and all of that. But transitions are one of the hardest things, especially at this age, but well into middle school and high school too. But if we can give them that warning and help them, teach them what 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes feels like, that's equivalent to, 2 more slides. You can walk up, slide down, walk up, slide down. That's your 5 minutes. And if they're used to that, whether it's getting ready for dinner or in 5 minutes we're going to take a bath, or in 5 minutes you're going to clean up your toys and we're going to have to, go pick up Aunt Susie at the airport, whatever it is. But if you're using those warnings or structure times, then you're helping them tune into the time of the day. And they also, and this is a key, they also then respect your word. They know that you're going to follow through. 5 minutes isn't that long and we're going to leave. So I don't ever advocate for, empty threats or 5 more minutes or 5 more minutes. Okay, 5 more minutes. Okay, I'll come back in 5 more. No, you have to follow through, because then they really believe what you say. And if we don't want to say no all the time, stop that all the time, then we have to follow through with the little stuff. consistency, follow through, trusting in our word and trusting in our relationship. That's what you're building with a 2, 3, and 4-year-old. So number 8 would be, believe it or not, to say less. Yeah, that's a big one for a speech pathologist, but seriously, sometimes even I catch myself over-explaining, or especially if they're starting to melt down, I say to myself 10 words or less, or sometimes just 5. We have to say shoes on, time for bed, no more jumping. It doesn't have to be yelling. It doesn't have to be threatening. It doesn't have to be harsh. It just simply has to be, this is factual. Put your shoes on and own it. And they will feel that vibe of yours like, oh, okay, she's legit, right? But less, especially in those trying moments where you're trying to get out the door, or you're trying to get to the next event, or you're running 5 minutes late. But less is more. Just leave it at that, right? Number 9, make it playful. Those are my 3 Ps anyways. I've shared before, if you're trying to get them out of the park or out of the party, do you want to hop like a bunny or do you want to carry my bag? Toddlers love games. They love choices, false sense of control, but you're going to build more cooperation. And I talked a lot about that in a previous episode, and we're going to stay connected. And it's not like we're disconnected, like I'm gathering up all of this stuff and they're running around like a crazy man. Help me pick up, if you're leaving the beach, let's do this together. Mama needs your help. You carry the bag. I'll carry the chairs, whatever the deal is. But make it playful, lighthearted, and have an attitude like, of course, we're in this together, right? All right. And then number 10 is to really empathize with what it must feel like to be a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old. At 3:00 in the afternoon, it's hot and they're tired and they're cranky and they're unsure. Try to empathize what it's like for them. So don't rescue them and do everything, and don't berate them because they're not a 6-year-old yet. And that's a fine dance. And when they have these meltdowns, before they cross that threshold and completely melt down, but if they're sad because they're leaving a play date, or if they're frustrated and tired because they didn't finish dinner on time and it's all over now and we have to get ready to go to bed and you can't sit here and play with your food. Those are natural consequences, but be with it and say, I know you wanted another chance to eat your dinner, and maybe tomorrow, whatever the scenario is. But if they're feeling sad or frustrated, it's like, oh, I know. At the end of a play date, I get really tired and cranky too. I know. But we'll go home. The car will be cool. And then we'll go home and we'll take a cool shower or a cool bath. And then we'll feel better. But right now, it's just like, we can be quiet in the car, right? But you name the feelings, you empathize with them, you understand, or let them know that you understand how they feel. Because they don't always have the vocabulary words, right? Especially when it comes to these feelings, right? They know when they're happy and sad, pretty much. Maybe when they're tired. They barely know when they're hungry. And they barely know when they're tired, because sometimes they run around, and it looks like they have lots of energy, but they're running around because if they stop, what will they do? They'll drop over and pass out. And so we have to give them that language so then they can, oh, okay, I know. I get frustrated when I have to leave my friends at the park or at the beach or at the library, wherever you are. And so help them feel it. be with it, label it, and know that that feelings aren't bad or good. They're just feelings, and we will pass through this. So those are the primary 10. And then here's a little bonus tip. They really do watch us more than they'll listen. And so I think it's really important, especially at this age, but I think all through childhood, that your ability to regulate your feelings, and even when you get frustrated, say, you drop an egg or you drop your yogurt or you make a mess, and you're like, oh, that makes me so frustrated. I'm going to breathe in, breathe out, count to 10, and then clean it up. And they'll watch you process that. They will watch you own your feelings and your frustration and work through it and then let go of it. Right? And even when we make mistakes, especially when we make mistakes and we yell at them or we snap at them, own it, apologize, and say, that wasn't nice of mommy. I'm sorry. Sometimes I make mistakes too, just like you. We're learning together. So here's a little word of encouragement. I think that you've made it to the end here through our 10 lists. And I want moms to have these lists to think about, okay, how can I make all of this? Because there's a lot of rich learning going on. And I know that parenting toddlers at this, especially once you get through to that 6, 8, 10-month age, because now they're a little bit mobile, they have a few understanding of words, and your life really does expand. And that parenting is not easy. It's no joke. But you learn to see their behaviors through a lens of development and growth instead of them against us or us against them, right? And I think as soon as we look at their behavior, their daily choices and interactions as a developmental process, then I think your whole mindset shifts, you as a mom and dad and grandparents, that they're working through it. That I've always said, like, kids would talk better if they could. Kids would behave better if they could. We would not yell so much if we knew how to calm ourselves down and relax. If we knew how to create an environment that had routine and a flow. If I got decent sleep every night, then I would greet my day calmer and in a more peaceful state. So I always go back to this, but your toddler is not giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time learning this process. And you, mom, dad, grandparents, caretaker, right? You're doing the deep work of really raising little humans, that we want them to grow to be confident and curious and verbal and engaging and kind and loving and helpful and cooperative, and to hear our directions and to be able to differentiate what's really, really serious from, oh, mom's just giving me a direction not to make any more messes in the dining room. So thanks for listening through all of this, for really wanting to hone your skills. It's a work in progress, right? If this episode gave you some clarity, gave you some encouragement, please take a moment and leave a review, because that really does help me reach parents just like you through Talking Toddlers, through higher learning. I'm now on YouTube. We're getting those videos out because I know we all learn through different modalities. I want to reach as many moms in your position that are eager to say, gosh, how can I do this and love the role that I'm embracing, at the same time build this remarkable relationship with my little child. And one last thing, always keep in mind that if you're really struggling with one particular thing, whether it's bedtime or meal time or picky eating or routines, all of that, then check out my tiny challenge that gives a concrete plan that you and I can come up with. It's simple, directive, 5 days in a row, 1 week, a coaching series where we solve that one issue and you gain momentum and you find like, I can do this. And it really empowers you to say, we can face these hurdles together and there's always a solution. There's always a reason why they're melting down or you feel like you're spinning your wheels. And I can help you kind of peel back the layers and find those solutions together quickly in 5 days. All right. God bless. Take care. And thanks again for spending your precious time with you. I really appreciate it.